President Cyril Ramaphosa, in his capacity as chair of the SADC Organ on Politics, Defence and Security Cooperation, will take part in a two-day extraordinary SADC Organ Troika Summit in Malawi. Now, the summit is reviewing the progress of the SADC mission in Mozambique, which was deployed to support the country's fight against terrorism and acts of extreme violent extremism. We're joined now by Professor André Thomashausen, who's an expert on Mozambique and international law, to talk more about this. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon, Prof. If we could maybe just start with an overview of the performance of the SADC in Mozambique over the last few months, given the challenges that have been faced as they try to deal with that situation.
Well, good day to you and the listeners as well. What is common knowledge is that the force, which is called by the acronym of SAMIM, is under-equipped and has severe logistic restraints. They have two Oryx helicopters that have both been damaged in enemy fire. They have lost some people, sometimes due to inexperience, like a Botswana soldier fell out of a flying helicopter because his seatbelt wasn't properly fastened. So it has not been without problems. The terrain is very, very difficult. It is, in most cases, non-negotiable with vehicles. And some of the vehicles are not suited to this mission. Plus, of course, they are understaffed and they lack the funds to do more. But with the little they have done remarkably well to stabilize things in the area of their operation, which is, of course, very limited. Cabo Delgado is about the size of KwaZulu-Natal. So to have effectively about 280 fighting personnel for such an area cannot achieve very much. And this is the main constraint. This is why Mozambique is increasingly relying on the support from Rwanda. And they've just extended the mission of Rwanda by another 6 months.
Right, and that extension is quite an important point that you bring up, because this is something that South Africa is also involved in, and there's a lot of debate about finances. So when we talk about the extension of the assistance that we give to Cabo Delgado, or Mozambique rather, what do you think should be resolved within this extraordinary sitting in terms of resources to make sure that SADC is providing the best assistance that it can?
Well, in my view, it should become more inclusive. It should become more of a SADC mission rather than a South African mission. For South Africa, it's very difficult to sustain an additional expense of 2 million rand every 3 months. This will be the third renewal period, the third 3-month period. If we put this into perspective, 2 billion rand is about $140 million. And the ANC was only able to, for instance, participate in the municipal elections a few weeks back because a Russian large business donated $5 million to it. So 5 million makes a huge difference to our internal situation and democracy and the holding of elections, and 140 million are being spent to secure essentially foreign interests in Cabo Delgado, the interests of very, very large, some of the world's largest oil and gas companies. So we would expect from South Africa that this becomes more inclusive and that countries also contribute directly to the cost.
No, absolutely. And what about the way in which they have handled the situation? You have mentioned briefly that troops have been sent in, even including Rwanda now. But there's a lot of criticism in the way that there is no harder hand in which SADC is approaching this issue in Mozambique. What are your thoughts around that argument?
Well, there I would disagree. It is really very good that SADC follows, because the contingent is 90% South African. It follows our human rights culture in South Africa, that we don't just go and pursue a scorched earth policy and simply burn down villages that we might suspect of supporting insurgents, that we do respect human rights, and that we are also aware, we have a sensitivity in South Africa of the huge humanitarian challenge. If you clear an area of insurgent action, then once you've cleared it, there has to be a humanitarian action to follow that will rebuild infrastructure, that will reinstitute minimal facilities like schools and health posts and administration. Otherwise, we are creating a no man's land, a complete wasteland, and that serves absolutely no purpose. So the South African contribution is definitely beneficial. It is also beneficial to the SANDF because like when you learn to play piano, if you can never play it on stage in a theater, then you don't know how well you can play. So the SANDF is getting some practical combat experience, for which I'm sure they're quite grateful.
Right. Now, this is a final question, and it might be a difficult one, Prof, but I'm just wondering, that extension that was agreed upon late last year was supposed to be until the 15th of January. Obviously, the situation is still quite rife in Mozambique, and there's going to be further extensions. I mean, how long do you think that this could be prolonged for before we see some kind of peace come over Mozambique?
Well, we've just received the news a few minutes ago that the next extension of another 3 months has been approved, and President Ramaphosa highlighted the necessity of solidarity and unity within the SADC grouping, and that SADC has to stand by its members when they are threatened. But I don't think it can be over in 3 months. This is an issue that results from 30 years of misgovernance and neglect. Mozambique is not a model country. It incurred an international debt credit of 2,000 million euros, 2 billion euros, and it cannot account for this money. And it is now relying on South Africa with severe economic and social challenges to solve an insurgency problem, which is the result of underdevelopment, of actually complete neglect. A province of the size of KwaZulu-Natal that only counts 6 petrol stations, only 1 provincial hospital that can do anything beyond administering Panados, and so on. The underdevelopment of Cabo Delgado is well documented. Half the population of Cabo Delgado has fled. They are internally displaced people. The remaining people are scattered, are hiding, are living on the most basic form of existence that one can imagine. So there has to be a massive humanitarian effort. This should be declared an international humanitarian crisis, and there should be assistance from Europe. There should be assistance from the United States and China. Just mentioned the 3 wealthiest blocs in the world, to rebuild infrastructure and to provide for the most basic things that allow people to exist and not to run away.
No, absolutely. Professor André Thomashausen, an expert on Mozambique and international law expert, giving us some insight into that extraordinary summit that's being held by SADC members about the situation in Mozambique.